Yes.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this panel. So now we're going to discuss a very interesting topic about the Web3 new opportunities in the global entertainment industry. So I'm Min. I'm a partner at Foresight Ventures. I'll be the moderator for today. And we have a line of amazing speakers with us. So shall we start with each one of you gentlemen to give a brief introduction of yourself and the organization you're representing?
Sure. Great pleasure to be here. My name is Yat. I'm chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. We're a Hong Kong-based company. Today, we have over 540 investments in the Web3 space, known for Web3 gaming, I guess, but we do a lot more in the industry, and I guess we'll talk about that later. I'm happy to be here.
Hello, this is SY. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Story, and we're building, I think of us as building a kind of a massive IP Legoland. If NFT gave ownership to IP, what we're trying to do is basically we're embedding licensing, royalty sharing, metadata into an IP so that you can frictionlessly repurpose and remix it without any middleman. And we're layer one, and we have about 400 builders now kind of integrating onto Story and kind of 4 million addressable users coming on. And yeah, we have a lot of exciting news in the next 2 or 3 months. Thank you.
I'm Ray. With my co-founder and I started a company called NiGet 16 years ago. It's one of the biggest meme sharing platforms in the world. 3 years ago, we started a Web3 company called Memeland, sharing memes and also creating meme coins. So basically, I make and share memes for a living. Yeah, best job in the world. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terrence. I'm the founder and CEO for Humanity Protocol. We're an identity-focused blockchain where we think with whether it's content or whether it's artificial intelligence, it's going to become more and more important for us to figure out whether the account or the address you're interacting with is a human being or not. So we're starting with proof of humanity and then using that as a springboard for creating an open identity graph.
Amazing. All right, so let's start the panel. My first question would be, as we all know, in the Web2 space, the digital entertainment content platform and gaming apps has always been attracting the most user traffic. And some will argue that in the Web3 space, this is also the best track to drive massive adoption. So would you agree on that? And what would you think is the unique advantage of this track compared to other verticals in Web3? Shall we start with Yet?
Right, so you're talking about gaming, you mean, generally? Yeah.
Digital entertainment.
Digital entertainment broadly, right. So first, yeah, I mean, I agree. We invested in this belief that Web3 entertainment and culture is going to be the biggest thing that will drive adoption into this new internet. And that really isn't that sort of special to think about, because if you think about what it is that we do in Web 2 and Web 1, actually it is entertainment, it is culture, it is gaming, right? So we believe that everything that you do basically in Web 2 will actually be happening in Web 3 anyway, just with a value layer, because you have digital property rights, you have ownership of these things, and as a result, you'll be able to get more benefits from them, right? And one of the challenges that the industry had wasn't only the content and the games. I mean, remember, for those of you who are old enough to remember what the internet was in the 90s and early 2000s, it was pretty shit, right? The web browser wasn't good, internet connection was ugly, it was messy. That's kind of a little bit where Web3 is right now, a little bit from that evolutionary standpoint. But the other thing is, of course, that in Web 2, the distribution platforms have actually locked people out. So if you're doing NFTs in games, Apple won't let you, right? Google was difficult. Facebook won't let you. All the platforms won't let you do that. But this year, actually, there's been another change with, with one of our, I guess, portfolio companies as well, and with Ton Play and with Ton, basically on the Telegram platform, they've basically allowed people to basically leverage the network effects of roughly almost 1 billion users to basically become the next kind of app store. Not necessarily just for Web3 companies, just basically anyone who wants to create content. So that distribution channel, I think, is going to sort of solve that problem, I think, to create this first wave of mass adoption. And I'll close with one more parallel, which is, for those of you who will remember when Facebook first came out and they opened up their APIs for people, that's where virality started to come up, right? People were basically building apps, not just like Farmville. Actually, Hong Kong had a lot of social gaming companies that just emerged because someone allowed you to essentially leverage their network effects, and that's what we see with Telegram. So I think this year, in the next sort of 12 months, we'll continue to see massive growth in Web3 gaming, culture, and entertainment.
Yeah, awesome. Aswai, what's your point of view on that?
Oh yeah, I think for us, we're kind of general IP protocol, but at the same time, I think, if you think about the first phase of Web3, it was about finance and money, and that tipping point was the global financial crisis. In the same way, I think we think the next big phase is going to be IP, entertainment, and content, and I think the big inflection point and tipping point for that is generative AI. The reason is, I think it's generative AI gives two angles. One is the positive angle is that everyone is now a creator, but not just creator, as a studio. They can actually make your idea, turn your idea into fully fleshed content within an instant. But at the same time, what Gen AI is doing, they're taking all your data and IP without your consent and training on them and getting all the upside without your consent. So what we are doing, I think what the content creators' IP really need the blockchain solution, we think, on a two level. One is for protection, because and to get compensated. You need this disintermediation of all the IP intermediaries to get compensated in license and get the right compensation in the licensing the right way. You can't imagine an AI model to do 1 billion legal negotiations in parallel. So what we're trying to do is let's make on-chain licensing, on-chain licensing, on-chain IP registration possible, so that people can frictionlessly license all these data or data sets without any intermediaries. So that's one thing. On the second level, what we think is going to be very important is these. Once you have this generative AI, you can make incredible stuff very easily. But if you give actually your IP as an IP Lego, right? Let's say, the best Jedi film, the best next Jedi film, the next best Balenciaga design, it can all come from you, right? Because you can take these interesting IPs, and actually with generative AI, you can make the next big film, the next big video, the next big music very easily. So I think Gen AI gives, like the only technology that gives this kind of composability is Web3. And so Gen AI coupled with this IP Lego, IP composability will actually unlock a lot of use cases for kind of the mass audience.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, Ray, what's your view? Because you're like building all the memes and NFTs that's very close to like massive adoption. What's your view on that?
Yeah, people say that children is the future. I look at how our children spend their time. It's TikTok, games, right? And then maybe entertainment stuff, movies, and maybe Netflix. Right, so if you ask me, I think it's pretty obvious that digital entertainment is leading, right? It's taking up the most time of our future generation, right? So I believe that the change is happening there. I think that's one thing. Another thing is, I would say that when you look at the market right now, when you look at entertainment, right? When you look at the speaking space right now, there are only a few types of people that actually can make talking as a living, right? Either you speak at like TED Talk and stuff, you're sharing like serious stuff, or you become like a stand-up comedian, right? You talk about funny shit, right? That's how people will pay you to see that, right? So I think on one hand, crypto, blockchain can be very serious, for example, talk about, okay, how can we tokenize that real asset or make the change to the monetary system? But on the other hand, people also want to have fun, right? So I believe that digital entertainment on that angle will also make I'm not sure whether mass adoption, right? But definitely that will be a growth in that area as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Terrence?
I think just sort of seconding what Ray was saying, right? If we look at internet 20 years ago, I think, as Yat said, it's games. In fact, I think there was a study saying that the primary driver of innovation for internet technology is largely porn and gambling. So it's a form of entertainment. I think, if we look at sort of the Web3 world, I think it's games, it's getting people on board and engaging. I think what we're doing with Humanity Protocol is sort of tangentially related, because I think ultimately as there's more. I think when it comes to digital entertainment, there's the consumer and there's the producer, right? I think with AI, with deepfakes, all that sort of stuff, it's becoming really easy to become a producer. I can go to ChatGPT and pretty much create an article about anything and use different sort of apps and have that entire video created with Yat's face talking about it with Ray's voice. You know, it's pretty easy to do that now. And then what we also see is, you know, in terms of consumers, there's now actually, because of AI, it's easier to create bots. It's really easy to pretend, right? Like there are a lot of these. There's a massive user base for these Telegram games, coming out with hundreds of millions of people. I don't really believe it's a couple 100 million people. I do think it's definitely in the millions. But obviously, how hard is it to create a new Telegram account, right? You've seen photos and videos of these phone farms in China where, you know, one computer is controlling 2,000 smartphones, right? So I think for us, what we're trying to do is help with the attribution, because ultimately everything goes back to human being. You sort of want to advertise, you want to produce content for people to consume, and ultimately if you want to pay for stuff, you're paying a human being who's actually creating this content, right? So for us, I think what we're trying to do is say, you know what, how do we add the human element to the blockchain space, and then, you know, down the road, adding in different sort of data points and identity pieces to it, but I think that's for another conversation.
Gotcha. It's an entertainment panel, so it's okay to be a little bit more entertaining. So the next question is actually about AI technology in identity and data, but I think some of the panelists have covered some bit of it. I want to dive a little bit deeper. So what other innovations do you think AI technology can bring to Web3 entertainment and content creation? And how does the identity and data come into play? And what kind of like potential use cases you think that haven't been fully explored? So can we start with Terrence?
Sure. So I think what I said earlier probably covered a good sort of half of it, right? Because, you know, when it comes to artificial intelligence and tying it into Web3 and content creation, I think it's how do you add in capital? I think crypto is very much tied to money and liquidity. How do you incentivize people, whether it's on both the production side or the consumption side? I think as these tools become easier and easier to make, it's going to be super important for there to be infrastructure. It's going to be super important for there to be infrastructure to safeguard some of the potential problems, right? It's really easy now to rip stuff off and create it as your own. It's really easy to create 20,000 addresses and farm airdrops, right? So I think one of the key things that we're doing is making sure that we can protect against that. And then the other thing, when we look at sort of historically in the Web 2 world, user data that is owned by the platforms, right? You look at Facebook, when you're playing games on Zynga, ultimately Zynga gets some of that information, Facebook gets the majority of it, and then Facebook uses that to monetize. What we want to make sure is that ultimately this data is self-sovereign. You can control your own data. Potentially, platforms can be making revenue splits, or you can say, hey, you know what? I only want to provide any sort of information if I'm getting paid. So creating sort of infrastructures so that there's flexibility and ultimately the power rests with the people who are creating and producing this data.
I remember when I was a kid, when I played games, you talk to the NPC, the non-people character, right? No matter how many times you talk to them, they say the same shit, right? But right now, if you go to a game, you talk to a character, they actually can use AI to have a genuine conversation with you, right? I think that part is already kind of like mind-blowing, right? Not to mention all this like virtual girlfriend, boyfriend opportunity, right? I think that part is huge, right? Given a lot of people these days are kind of like otaku, right? They spend more time at home with the computer, right, than outside. Right? I think this is also always a joke on YouTube, where a lot of like crypto people, right, when you talk to a hot girl online, it's actually another dude, right, in another basement. I think that part can create a lot of opportunities. Terence mentioned, hey, in the past, you can't catfish people that easily. Right now, you can easily do so with AI. Right? And I can become super handsome on Twitter, right, with one click. I think that's, on one hand, that can be an interesting opportunity, right, for a lot of like content creator. In the past, because of skills, because of the ability, maybe they cannot do that very easily. Right now, with all these like AI tools, they can write programs, they can make good pictures, right? They can make good drawings. I think that is huge. And on the other hand, I would say that the change that will happen is, it's kind of like, going back like 30 years and ask, what exactly can computer do with for the human beings, right? I would say that with all these kind of new tools, that actually makes more people have the ability to become the creator, right? Then the question is, hey, when there's so many creators, how can you become like, I would say, stand out from the crowd, right? And how can you actually make a living, become a creator? Because in the past, when you tell people, you are an artist, right? You actually, not artist, but more like actor and actress, you actually can kind of make a living. But these days, even my mom can be an influencer, right? Then how can you compete with my mom on like cooking and stuff, right? So I think that part, maybe crypto can help, maybe blockchain can help, because you actually can build your community, right? Or with a fan group of, with a group of people who actually support you from the early beginning. When you go back, right, they actually go back with you, you actually grow with them. I think all this kind of stuff, on one hand, AI unlocks more opportunity for more human beings. But on the other hand, blockchain and stuff, it may also kind of help them on the financial side, on the ownership side. I think those are interesting opportunity. Actually, when we only have AI, maybe that's not good enough. Right? When we only have blockchain, maybe that's also good enough. But when we have both tech together, I think that's where real magic can happen. Yeah.
Well said. SY, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so for us, I think I'm kind of in line with actually what Terence talked about. Basically, what we are working on is how do you minimize the negative effects of Gen AI on the IP, and also how do you maximize it at the same time. The negative impacts I see actually is the fact that all these AI models are training on your IPs without your consent, right? They're just taking away all your data and making all the upside. And not only just that, also they hijack your future traffic. Back in the days with Google, they actually take you to your website and you click it, you get a traffic. But now you just get all the info on ChatGPT. So that's actually, surely this is not good for AI in the long term, because you need really valuable human original IP to sustain the AI models and improve the AI models. So for us, one of the things what we're doing is, as I said, we are about making an IP Lego. We're about enshrining licensing sovereign rights on the IP. So you can put on your licensing agreement that's actually encoded into your IP and NFT. Don't fuck with my IP. Don't fuck with my data. But if you want to actually use my data, abide by these rules, by smart contracts, and give me this kind of royalty sharing contract, and so on and so forth. Grimes actually said, okay, use my voice for your music, Gen AI-driven music, but give me 50% royalty share, blah, blah, blah. So we're actually making a GitHub for AI models and fine-tuning, creator-based fine-tuning data sets, IP-based fine-tuning data sets. The reason why you can have Harry Potter Balenciaga commercial you watch on YouTube is because you've trained that open source model on 20 hours of Harry Potter movies, 20 hours of Balenciaga commercials, right? So we can all have all these data sets and have an embedded licensing royalty sharing terms that are actually executed by smart contracts. So that's one thing. Second thing, we want to maximize the empowering effects of generative AI. So we think if humans have these inspirational toolkits of IP Legos, let's say someone's voice, someone's narrative universe, someone else's IP is something that you can use at your fingertip, but at the same time have a magical alchemy of basically generative AI. You can create something incredible. So we have companies like, there's a company called Ablo, which is on our chain. They've signed Balmain, Dolce & Gabbana, Vans, and Crocs. What they do is these fashion brands register their IP as a Lego piece. And actually you can use a generative AI to make a remix. And actually now, these fashion brands can set a contract. Only people with 100,000+ influencer followers, influencers, plus when these influencer gets 1,000+ pre-orders on their remix products, we're going to make it an official project and we're going to do a revenue share. And we have another company called Sakai, which actually lets you create webtoon or interactive comics by clicking on Japanese comic studios' narrative universe, Japanese comic studios' characters, and then combine that and create a great anime. And then if they actually monetize their IP with this Gen AI-driven anime, you actually do a revenue split with the comic studio. And this is really big contrast with like 5 years ago. Even if you have this Balenciaga design, even if you have Japanese comic studios narrative universe, the best you can do is a fan art or a fan fiction. But now you can make an anime. Now you can make a Balenciaga level shoes, right? So I think actually this kind of combination of IP Legos that actually does a royalty share provenance attribution through smart contracts plus this Gen AI will actually result in an explosion of creativity. And we're basically signing a bunch of apps, voice Lego company, fashion Lego company, story Lego company. A bunch of these apps are actually coming on board, and we'll be announcing that in actually 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very thought-provoking and interesting. Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts on AI.
Sure. I mean, a lot has already been said on the content side. So one of the things that I probably want to add outside of agreeing on the content side is one of the big drivers we think in AI broadly will be autonomous AI agents. So in that sense, what we're going to see is everyone in our private life, in our business life, will, in the same way that today we access multiple websites to sort of get our information and to do business, actually autonomous AI agents are actually going to be the ones that will interact and transact with us. And actually, interesting enough, game universes with non-player characters like the NPCs are actually going to be one of the key drivers of that, because actually most people in the world interact with that kind of dumb AI. But what will happen is that those type of dumb AI that's inside those games, they become autonomous. And actually, we think that also will drive interoperability, because it allows for these sort of AI inside games to move across other games. So just think about that, what that means, right? Right now, we can't think about, we think about portability and interoperability between gaming assets to actually be something that a game designer has to make or create. But actually, with an autonomous AI agent, they will actually be able to sort of create experiences themselves in other game universes. And we see inklings of that in what you see like in Minecraft and in Roblox, but they're very primitive for now. But when you have them become autonomous, they will exist in different ways, which comes to my final point on this one, which is, the whole point about decentralization is actually ownership of this infrastructure, right? And, for instance, every time you're contributing data to, ChatGPT, to OpenAI, actually the value is not in the data they've scraped. The value is in the query you've given them. Every time you ask a question or you ask them for input, you're actually giving them knowledge about your interest, your zeitgeist, your sentiment, whatever. That's actually what's really valuable. That's how they build the data structure. Not that different for a search query, or not that different than when you're sharing photos on Instagram. And what Web3 and blockchain allows you to do is that decentralization, and through essentially tokenization, you create ownership of that. So if I'm going to add all this value to an autonomous AI agent, if I'm going to give all my ideas to it to have value, actually, you as the end user should be owning that. Right? And that's actually the really powerful thing. So in the future, where AI will create everything anyway on the content side, actually the vision should be, we think, and what we're investing towards, is that actually the users who have contributed toward it, not as a creator only, but as individuals, should also have a share in that. Right? And as a result of that, you create more equity, you create more value distribution, which is all in the spirit of decentralization. So I think the underlying protocol of that ownership becomes very, very key, and is only possible in Web3. It's not really possible in Web2.
Very well said. I think the future of AI plus Web3 gaming and entertainment is huge. We're also very bullish on that sector. But my next question would be about the challenges. So what do you think is the most pressing challenges we're facing today with the Web3 entertainment? Is it the regulatory uncertainty? Is it the decreasing on-chain user activities? Or what's on your mind, and how is your company addressing them? Yeah. Do you want to go first?
I guess I can start first. So first, we don't think regulation is the biggest concern in Web3 gaming. If you're in finance, maybe that would be a concern, but not in Web3 gaming. I think the biggest challenge I had mentioned a little bit earlier was around distribution. So if it was possible to distribute your Web3 and blockchain games back in the day, and Apple and Google and Facebook weren't restrictive, then we would have much bigger Web3 games already today. So I think that's one, and as I said earlier, Ton Telegram does address that, so I think we're very bullish about where that's going to go. But the second issue is the paradigm, right? When you think about Web3, the paradigm of Web3 isn't just a sort of, is it a better game, is it more entertaining? The game is broadly the same, actually. It's actually a business model innovation, and actually at its core, a big change in terms of the paradigm, which is ownership, right? So, and the majority of the traditional gamers don't actually appreciate ownership because they don't understand it. And I think, to me, there is a link between not understanding ownership and not being financially literate. So in Hong Kong, we don't really have that problem. So we have a lot more people doing Web3 here as a proportion of our population doing that, because most people in Hong Kong are obsessed about real estate. They sort of play with the Hong Kong Jockey Club. They like to hang in Macau. They have and they're in the stock market. So and I would argue that a lot of the Chinese communities are the same, right? Which, by the way, is one of the reasons why there's a high concentration of Web3 users in the sort of Chinese diaspora around the world, because the whole financial literacy, the interest in money, the interest in capitalism is very, very strong. But when you go to other countries, maybe like in Europe or parts of America, which you can see in the political landscape, there's a big push towards like socialism, right? Money is not a good thing. You don't talk about that anymore. Capitalism is a bad word, right? Consequently, anything that relates to money becomes negative. So when you see Web3 gaming in America, when they see Web3 gaming, they say, oh my goodness, this is bad because this is financification, and I don't want you to rip me off, and I don't want to, I don't want to be in this capitalist environment. Even if they don't think of it this way, they feel that way. Right? So I think that's the challenge, and I think I think what we see happening in Web3 is a answer and a reflection to the global problem we have around how we think of capitalism. So our view is that Web3 will actually help solve and grow sort of capitalism, because we can have all be included. Because most people couldn't be included in that, they feel they fear it, right? So we think that's but that's the barrier as well, right? If you're already negative towards money, you will be negative towards crypto and Web3. So that, I think, is not just a Web3 gaming challenge. I think it's just a Web3 challenge in general.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting perspective. That's why what's your thought on that?
I think Yad has a good point about distribution, and I think for content, it's not just about making money, right? People want to feel like they're influencing. People want to feel like they're entertaining like a massive number of people, so that distribution is as important as monetization. And the distribution, I think, platform is not there. And I think what he's talking about, Ton, is very encouraging. And yesterday I was even with one of the leading gaming entrepreneurs who sold his company to Netmarble for like $500 million, and he was saying, he was just showing me all these Ton apps and then Telegram apps, and this is actually exciting to me. It feels like when WeChat or Kakao just opened up their game section. So as a gaming entrepreneur, this is like getting my blood pumping. So I think that's good. And then he was like, okay, even for your layer 1 launch, you should have interesting Telegram related apps to just kind of growth hack, and that was very interesting to me to see this kind of insanely huge number that he was showing me. So I think that's a very encouraging fact that Web3 now seems to have a little bit of distribution going with Telegram. So that's great. On the other side, I think on the second level, what I think is still kind of lacking, I kind of wrote about it a month ago, but I think still most of the entrepreneurs I've seen, a lot of them are just kind of doing another layer 2 with like a technical tweak, another layer 1 with a little technical tweak, or like 100,000 like DeFi chains. So it's like a very copy pasta stuff that I'm seeing, and actually, at least like in 2017, 18. So I was looking at my friend, Simon from Hashton, like another. I mean, so those. The one who shouldn't be named, Do Kwon's going into crypto. At least I was when I was 2016, 17, I was a Web2 entrepreneur. They were talking to me about all these Web3 projects. Every single project was like solving different things. Although there are a lot of scams, they had like, okay, I'm going to solve this, solve healthcare, solve this. I was just seeing a lot of different types of projects, but now I see a lot of repetitive projects, and I think that's pretty. And if you want to get outside the crypto space and get mass adoption, like I think you do need that kind of almost like 2017-18 style idealism about what you can solve. And in Web 2, it was the same. Like in late 90s, Pets.com to WebVan, they all collapsed. Everyone thought it was a scam project, right? But in 15 years later, Instacart to Chewy, it's basically what everyone thought about in Web 1, right? So I think we need that kind of more kind of ambitious folks who are not thinking about another little optimization copy pasta project, but let's solve new things, right? That's I think important.
Tech is awesome, right? People sucks, right? I think that's the main reason. Oh, that's the main challenge. Actually, tech is awesome. People are awful, right? That's a better soundbite. Yeah. And I think the biggest challenge is always about human beings. I think the tech itself usually is driven, right, by people who are like very idealistic, right? They are also very into solving real problems, or at least solving their own problems, right? But at the same time, when money is involved, I think it will attract a lot of I wouldn't say scammers, right, but more like very like a business savvy people, right? And then they just try to extract value from the tech. I think you see that in basically every area, right? Not just tech, but even like boba milk tea or stuff, right? Yeah, when it's hot, everyone will invest into it, and then it makes it sucks, and then some people will scam money out of it, and then people think that, oh, that industry is dead, right? So I feel like human beings is always a problem, right? So human beings sucks. I think that would be the biggest challenge. But at the same time, so I don't know whether your humanity protocol can solve that. Yeah, but I think at the same time, in Web3, we don't need that many people to support a good project, right? For example, like a good NFT project, right? How many holders do you need? You only need a few thousand holders, right? You don't have to convince the world that you're building something awesome. You only need to convince like 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, right? I think that's something that the new incentive system, right, where Web3 can bring to the creators, to the community, to the builder. I think that is part of solving the problem right now. On the other hand, honestly, when you look at the world, people who can change the world is always a minority. You don't need that many smart people to change the world. Right? So at the same time, human being sucks, but you only need a few talents, right, to change the world. Right? So I think that part is also very bullish, right? When you look at all these speakers on the stage, all the real builders in the space, I think that part is, hey, how can we get some talents, right, to solve some real problems where get most people excited, and then when more and more people joining the space, then I would say the concentrations of scammer will be lower, right? Just like any groups, right? When you add more people to it, actually you have more like new thoughts, new ideas, and real usage. And I think the challenge is also the opportunity. Yeah.
I think we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll just add my point of view pretty quickly. I think it sort of in line with what these guys have said. I think it's actually a couple things, right? Number one is I think the problem with Web3 is that it's so close to money. Unlike building a Web 2 company or even producing a movie, right? Like
they're all very related to money.
No, they're very related to money, but it's not that close to liquidity. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? If I start a company now, I have to generate real revenues, I have to do real stuff, and then hopefully at some point I take it listed or some private equity firm buys me out. Right? If I can't just produce a script. I can't just produce a script and say, hey, you know what? I've lined up Tom Cruise, lined up a couple actresses, and they kind of like it, so let me list this script for $50 million, right? Which a lot of projects and a lot of companies, whether it's GameFi, whatever it is in the crypto space, can do historically because it's ease of access. People can, do ICOs, buy NFTs with USDT and whatnot. So because there's so much access to liquidity from retail. The problem is, as Ray said, it attracts scammers. But I think the problem is not even scammers. The problem is actually people with entrepreneurs or builders or creators with not that much ambition. Do you know what I'm saying? In the sense that, $1 million for these guys might not be a lot of money, but for a kid, who actually potentially has a talent to create something great, is already life-changing money, right? So being able to actually create an NFT project, sell it for $1 million, or pitch this and pick up some money, you start actually having a lot of people who don't really want to build big stuff. that actually changes the industry or takes the industry forward. So I think that's sort of one of the things. And then when you look at sort of games, it's that same thing, right? Like ultimately, I think most people in the world do not really care about what is the underlying technology. People care about user experiences. People care about ease of use. Most people don't even care how their data is stored, who has their data, any of that stuff. I think it's about building a real product that people want to use, people want to spend money on, not necessarily just to farm airdrops or farm rewards, but actually will spend money to view or to use. And I think that also ties in, as I said, with the ambition part, or how easy is it to access liquidity, et cetera, et cetera. So I think those are some of the challenges. And I think over time, as more people come into space, as Ray said, you don't need that many people. You just need a couple people who actually want to stick around and do something great, and it'll come out.
Awesome. So because of the time constraint, I think we have 2 more minutes left. I would like to end our discussion with one last question to give us a little bit more outlook into the future, a little bit more foresight. So what would you think is the biggest development trend in Web3 digital entertainment industry? Like can you briefly just summarize in 1 or 2 sentences?
The biggest one?
Development trend.
Well, maybe I'll start. There's macro, and and then there's, I guess, what's happening at project level. Macro, obviously political, right? So if you look at the U.S. election, I think it's going to be very much a bellwether. The U.S. has been very restrictive towards broader Web3 adoption because of basically the regulatory framework, depending on who wins the election. Even if the election doesn't go Trump's way, I think the broader Web3 crypto narrative is much better than before. But there's a difference between whether it's Kamala or whether it's Trump in terms of sort of that growth opportunity, because the US leads in that area. So that's definitely a macro trend, because that macro trend will drive broad liquidity and more support for basically Bitcoin, Ethereum. And what we've seen with the way that network effects are shared is that when they rise, the entire ecosystem will rise. So that's kind of macro. In terms of the development areas that we're focused on and we think is really important is reputation. So speaking of things like, the scammers, and right, the reason why scamming is possible is because there's no long-term reputation that's built today on Web3. But that's changing, right? The reason we do not change our identities all the time in real life, right, or because we don't leave a country to immigrate right away all the time, is because we have a reputation in our local ecosystems. And in the Web2 world, that's what we did, right? You have a reputation on Instagram, or you have a reputation on some community, or even in your game. Many people go back to play their old games, not because they necessarily love the game as much, but because they have a reputation with their friends and communities in those, right? So I think the next wave of that evolution that brings deeper liquidity, deeper activations, and more long-term activities is essentially building up reputational social layers, which is what we're doing with Mochaverse, but many other people are doing that as well. So I think that's a big, I guess, near-term trend.
Thank you.
I think you already asked the question, but I think generative AI is such a big inflection point for just wider Web3 industry, but just technology overall. So as I said, it's a very empowering technology, but it also has a lot of negative impact around just data theft, or just using your data without your consent, all of these fakes, stuff that kind of humanity protocols tries to solve. All these things, it's going to be a huge issue. And I think, secondly, I do think there needs to, one of the things that are going to be, I think it's already kind of become an issue after ETHCC. I think there's a bit of infrastructure fatigue among the builders because, it's kind of a lot of similar stuff coming over and over with just, and I think kind of panel like this and builders like this here really needs to kind of try to go against that trend and try to kind of show a little bit more hope for the builders here. Yeah.
For us, we're a little bit different, right? At Mimland and NIGET, we always try to focus on things that don't change so that we can invest money into that, right? So I would say that no matter Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, or Web 69, right, it's still human beings using it, right? So talk to the users, right? Talk to the people that you want to solve the problem for, right? Then you understand their need and try to build something that actually help them solve the problem. I think those are the things that will not change. And those are the things that we are also focusing on. Yeah.
Just quickly, I think, in terms of all the trends, I do think, further to my point previously, I think there are more and more great entrepreneurs and builders coming into the ecosystem. If we look at the whole crypto world, it's pretty small. The total market cap, I think, of all the tokens combined is still smaller than Microsoft, smaller than, NVIDIA. It's a pretty niche industry. I do actually think
$2 trillion niche, though.
$2 trillion niche, but there's enough. It's like the size of Apple, or like the size of one company in certain markets, right? So I actually do think there will be companies, there will be projects on chain that become sort of big conglomerates and actually become create products that are widely adopted as a result of all the infrastructure that's been built over the last decade, as a result of more people being comfortable with interacting with blockchain applications, and obviously all the things that are being done on the distribution side.
All right, very well said. So our time is up, and thank you again to my panelists today. Very wonderful, wonderful insight. And thank you for the audience to come to our Foresight Summit. So enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Ming, and our guest for the lovely and the insightful discussion.